have that instinct to go grab it, and then I remember, oh, that's in one of Paul's letters. You know, even a broken clock is right twice a day. That's what they say. And anything attached to Paul just kind of puts a bad taste in my mouth today. And I try to not even reference quotes using anything by Paul. And yeah, let me just say what I think Saul is. Saul was a Christian murderer, and Saul realized that it's not helpful to kill a Christian, because if you believe in Jesus Christ and you're not living in sin and you've repented and you keep repenting and you're trying your best and you're following Jesus, if somebody comes up and murders you, what happens? You go to heaven and you're a martyr. So Saul, I guess, got sick of killing Christians and probably realized, I mean, I'll just say it, Saul was a smart, intelligent, evil person. And clearly Saul realized, okay, I'm just creating a bunch of martyrs and I'm sending these people to heaven. That's not hurting them, right? Here on earth it's killing them, but Saul wanted to destroy people's soul. And that's why Saul made up seeing Jesus, like a lot of people make up hearing Jesus today. Jesus warned us against Saul in particular, saying if somebody tells you that they see me in the desert, don't listen to them. Well, outside of Damascus, Saul claims to have seen Jesus. And today, I just got an email earlier today from some invert, in all likelihood. Oh, Hans, blah, blah, blah. I had a psychedelic experience and met Jesus and he talks to me. People are still like this today. Saul was the same way, just some wacko who claimed that they saw Jesus. They're still around today. Pastors that, the pastors that they pretend like they have these one-on-one conversations with God. And I said to God, blah, blah, blah. And God said back to me, blah, blah, blah. That they're phonies. It's the same thing that Saul was doing. Oh, guys, trust me. I saw Jesus in the desert. No, BS. I'm calling BS. And what's crazy is how bent out of shape people get when you tell them that you don't support Paul, you think Paul is phony, and that you follow Jesus only. They get so bent out of shape, which is crazy because you explain to them, but wait, Jesus is the Messiah, right? Jesus Christ is the Messiah. Why are you so bent out of shape about me not liking this Paul person? Do you think that if you don't like one of the alleged apostles in the Bible, that's like the worst thing ever and you're going to hell because you don't like the apostle? I think that there's a part of this where we should all be in agreement about things. And this Paul thing is something that I just can't get past. I can't understand why anyone supports Paul and can't tell that he's a phony, that Paul is a phony. And okay, let me start reading these because I'm sure I have so much that I can say. John chapter 5, verse 14. Afterward, Jesus findeth him in the temple and said unto him, Behold, thou art made whole. Sin no more, lest a worse thing come unto thee. A big thing that I noticed difference between Pauline, what I would call Pauline doctrine, and Jesus, actual words of Jesus. Again, who is Paul? Some person, a mortal, a flawed human. Who is Jesus Christ? The Messiah. Perfect in every way. God manifest in the flesh. Whose words are more important? The Messiah or some human? And the more and more that you see that this some human is teaching things that directly go against Jesus Christ's words, you should stop listening to them. So yeah, here, Jesus usually has a message that is harder than Paul's message, which is generally love, love, love. Everything is love. Oh, you just have to be in the spirit. To me, it just reminds me of the best way that I have to explain it is, do you know how in Star Trek, when they start talking about, oh, the dilithium crystals, we need to realign the dilithium crystals, and they can go on and on, our iridium boosters are, the magnetic field is, and you know how they can just blab on and on about stuff? They're not really saying anything, but they're using sci-fi words together. To me, that's like the essence of Paul. Paul is saying a bunch of fluffy words that might sound okay if you're just passively sitting back and watching it like a TV program. But if you sit there and try to actually figure out what they're saying, it's very it's like it doesn't even, what are you saying? It's like not even saying anything. And here, right, Jesus tells us to don't sin anymore, and otherwise bad stuff is going to happen to you. Jesus was talking about hell. Jesus was talking about judgment and being perfect and repenting. And when you read Paul, you don't see that. You don't see the same message. John chapter 5. Marvel not at this, for the hour is coming, in the which all that are in the grave shall hear his voice, and shall come forth, they that have done good unto the resurrection of life, and they that have done evil unto the resurrection of damnation. One of the biggest things that you come into conflict with what I call plastic Christians is they have a very easy path to salvation. Their path to salvation is faith-based only. And I get it. I get the part where people are like, oh, faith is the only way to salvation. And they say stuff like, well, works aren't going to get you into heaven. And they're not understanding that What they're thinking about is they're just thinking about the Pharisees, the type of phonies who have a lot of money that they can donate to. Let me just make it like a modern thing. Somebody who's really well known in the community, the Christian community. They have a really well paying job. They make a ton of money. They give a lot of their money to the church. They, save the children type activities. They go to Africa. They do all that. Is not going to get you into heaven. You can't do a bunch of philanthropy type things, earthly things, and think that doing those things is going to get you into heaven. Okay, I agree with that. You can't buy your way into heaven. It's the same thing with I forget the name of it, the Catholic Church thing. You can't buy your way into heaven. That is something that I agree with. However, you can't go around stomping on works like works aren't important. Works are very, very important. So that's just a way that you can find a plastic Christian, Pauline Christian. They will come out and downplay the importance of works when nobody should be doing that. Why would anybody downplay good works? Good works are good. Of course, do good works. But don't do good works for your own gain. You should be doing them because it's God's will to do good things. John chapter 5. I can of my own self do nothing. As I hear, I judge, and my judgment is just, because I seek not mine own will, but the will of the Father which hath sent me. If I bear witness of myself, my witness is not true. There is another that beareth witness of me, and I know that the witness which he witnessed of me is true. I mean, here I chose this for judgment. We all know about judgment, and that Jesus is going to judge us. Well, how? If all you have to do is believe, on the blood of Jesus, like this is just me, another big plastic Christian thing. When people come to you and they're so over the top obsessed with things like labels. Oh, well, you have to be a born again Christian. Are you a born again Christian? I was born again. When I was born again my whole life. People that are like that, they're fixating on one thing that Jesus said of many things, and they're attaching a label to it. And to them, it's all about this label. I don't do labels. I don't support labels. Born again Christian is one of those labels that I don't support. Sure, I know that Jesus talked about being born again. That's just part of the process. That's something that everybody goes through. And you're not the judge of who's born again and who's not. Jesus is the judge. Again, the point of this is we're all going to be judged. How do you judge people? You need to have some sort of criterion to judge people. So Jesus is going to know if you're a phony or not. And based off of Jesus's words, it really isn't enough to be a lukewarmer and just totally passive. Even demons believe that Jesus Christ is the Messiah, right? John chapter 6. And we believe and are sure that thou art Christ, the Son of the living God. Jesus answered them, have not I chosen you 12, and one of you is a devil? He spake of Judas, of course. So I'll just stop here. This is just going back to, this is a video about Paul being a false apostle. Look, Jesus says right here that there's 12 apostles. There's not 13. There's 12, and one of them is a devil. And the 13th apostle, Saul, is just a total phony, just somebody self-important. Here I'll just talk about Paul's self-importance. Paul talks about, there are quotes of Paul. I don't have them here. You can go look them up yourself. Paul says my gospel more than once. My gospel, meaning Paul's gospel. Why would you say that? There's the gospel of Jesus Christ. There's no my gospel, your gospel, his gospel. And if there is, I don't want to listen to it, right? It's like the people that today try to pretend like God talks to them. No, God is not talking to us personally right now. That's not how it works. I don't want to hear your gospel. I have my KJV Bible and I can read Jesus Christ's words. Good enough for me. And I can talk to God anytime I want. I don't need you. I don't need Paul. I don't need Paul to get to God. I need Jesus to get to God. I don't need some pastor to tell me about Paul who's going to tell me about Jesus to how to get to. No, that's not how it works. I don't need 3 middlemen between me and Jesus. And continuing on. And they which heard it, being convicted by their own conscience, went out one by one. Okay, so this is talking about when the Pharisees were trying to get Jesus in trouble, so they brought an adulteress, and they were like, what are we going to do, Jesus? Let's stone her, right? And they which heard it, and then Jesus said, whoever is without sin, cast your first stone, of course. And they which heard it, being convicted by their own conscience, went out one by one, beginning at the eldest, even unto the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. When Jesus had lifted up himself and saw none but the woman, he said unto her, Woman, where are those thine accusers? Hath no man condemned thee? She said, No man, Lord. And Jesus said unto her, Neither do I condemn thee. Go, and sin no more. Then spake Jesus again unto them, saying, I am the light. Oh, okay, so I'll just stop here. Go, and sin no more. Here's the gospel of Jesus. You need to repent, and then you need to stop sinning. And it's not just about obsessing over the blood of Christ. Yeah, Jesus did die for our sins. That is a part of the gospel. That is part of what happened. And Jesus was a blood sacrifice for us. That is true. But there's more to salvation than just that. You can't just know the story and then you get into heaven because you know the story. Knowing the story is not enough. You have to live. You have to live it. You have to act on it. You can't be a lukewarmer. John chapter 8. Verily, verily, I say unto you, if a man keep my saying, he shall never see death. You have to do what Jesus says. You can't just believe in Jesus. You have to do what Jesus says. John chapter 12, verse 26. If any man serve me, let him follow me. Jesus is saying to follow him. If any man serve me, let him follow me, and where I am, there shall also my servant be. If any man serve me, him will my Father honor. Jesus doesn't say, oh, by the way, when I die, there's going to be this murderer who claims that they see me, and then they're going to become an apostle. Listen to that guy. That's not what Jesus said. Jesus said, follow me. And if you read, there's a quote, I don't have it here because I don't like looking up Paul stuff. There's a quote where Saul says, follow me like I follow Jesus. So there you go, just putting himself right in the middle of you. No man goes to the Father but through Jesus. So why are you going through Paul? And why are you going through some pastor who's talking about Paul, who then is talking about Jesus? You're separating yourself farther and farther. And then, I mean, even church, it's all the groupies. There's all the, we're not supposed to have churches. The churches today are dens of evil, just like they were in Jesus' time. It's the same. It's really bad. And you're not going to find Jesus. There might be a handful of churches out there that are better than they are evil, but I've never heard of it. And, lo and behold, why are all the churches today so lukewarm, and they love homos and they love tranny acceptance, transgender acceptance, and they also love Paul? They're always talking about Paul. Paul. If you walk in on some service, what are the chances that they're going to be talking about Jesus's words? What are the chances that they're going to be talking about Paul? And I don't have that much experience. You'll have to leave a comment. I just know from the little experience I have that phony plastic Christians, they all are obsessed with Paul, and it rubs me the wrong. I can't stand Paul. I hate it. When I read it, it does nothing for me. And I stand by this. I 100% think Paul is a false apostle. John chapter 14, believe me that I am in the Father, and the Father in me, or else believeth me for the very work's sake. It's all about Jesus. It really disgusts me that so many people spend so much time worrying about this Paul stuff, and it really infects them with a plastic version of Christianity. Revelation chapter 22, and behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me, to give every man according as his work shall be. It reminds me just of a Catholic thing. Why do Catholics exist when there's so much stuff straight out of Catholicism that clearly goes against the Bible? Okay, why do so many people support Paul and lukewarm churches today that are selling you fake stories about how, oh, all you got to do is believe, that's it, don't worry about it, once saved, always saved? There's some really bad teachings out there, and people go along with it, even though we have the Bible, which shows us that that's not the case. To give every man according as his work shall be. I'm Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. This is Jesus Christ speaking in the book of Revelation, which I do like the book of Revelation. It feels inspired to me. And that's God gives us discernment to know these things. What feels inspired, what doesn't feel inspired. Here's just a point about just more on the works. I mean, I won't read it just because this is very well-known verses. I'll scroll through it in case you want to pause and read it. Faith, if it hath not works, is dead, being alone. James, there were other people around when Saul was preaching that knew that Paul was preaching really dangerous stuff, trying to say that faith is everything and that works mean nothing. And so here's just proof where James is trying to kind of nip that in the bud. Hey, faith without works is nothing. Milk and meat. Milk is easy, sweet for babies. Meat for adults, harder to chew. You got to kill the animal to get the meat. Here's just a kind of a one-off thought about Saul that people have brought up that I agree with completely. And I'll just frame it around this Psalms. Psalms 138, verse 7. Though I walk in the midst of trouble, thou wilt revive me. Thou shalt stretch forth thine hand against the wrath of mine enemies, and thy right hand shall save me. Why is the number one person that people are listening to when it comes to Christianity a Christian murderer? And people love these redemption stories, alleged redemption stories. That's not a redemption story. If you're murdering people, you don't come back from that. You don't murder Christians and then, oh, just kidding. Oh, I've flipped around. By the time you're sitting there murdering multiple people, you're a horrible person. You're a horrible, horrible person. You're of the devil. You're not of God if you're murdering people. And a great thing that people have brought up, God could have chosen anyone to take the place of, Saul to be a prophet. God can choose who's a prophet and who's a false prophet. Why would God choose a murderer to be a prophet? And people say, oh, it's a good story. It's a No, I don't agree with that. God would not choose a murderer. Murderers are going to go to hell. Thou shalt not kill. And God would have picked someone totally different. Paul Saul is a phony because he's a murderer. God takes care of us. Oh, I guess so. The Psalm. God protects us from evil. God takes care of us. Yes, bad stuff does happen to us, and we are going to face a lot of adversary. That's the way that this place is. Think of Job. But did Job ever murder anyone? When all this horrible stuff was happening to Job, did Job go start killing people? No, and everything turned out great for Job in the end. And we're all going to go to heaven, and this stuff isn't going to matter anyways. It's vanity. So the point is, you're not going to be a murderer and then all of a sudden turn around and be this amazing prophet. That's not how it works. Just Occam's razor, really. What's more likely the story, that somebody just turns totally around from this crazy psycho murderer and they all of a sudden become this great prophet, or this person is evil all along and they just change their game plan? For I say unto you that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you shall in no case enter into the kingdom of heaven. Do you think a Christian murderer, has righteousness that's exceeding the scribes and Pharisees? And here again is Jesus's message is harder than everybody's going to make it. Oh, Pauline, plastic Christian stuff. Everybody's going to make it. When people's horrible family members die, that everybody knows that these people were just horrible, horrible people. What do they say? Oh, they're up in heaven now. That's plastic Christianity. No, it's not easy. You need to be better than bad people to go to heaven. And we all know this. We know this. You got to be better than the bad people if you want to go to heaven. You have heard that it was said by them of old time, thou shalt not kill, and whosoever shall kill shall be in danger of the judgment. But I say unto you that whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of judgment. Continuing on, Jesus didn't come to get rid of the law. Jesus's laws are even harder because Jesus knows that it's not about the letter of the law. That's what the Jews, the Pharisees, they're all about making loopholes to skate past the letter of the law. Jesus knows better, obviously, and says it's not about that. It's about the spirit of the law. It's not even just that you can't kill people. You're not supposed to have that hostile, you're not supposed to come from that hostile place. Same thing about, it's not only that you're not supposed to be an adulterer. You're not even supposed to consider that idea, come from that wicked place and have adulterous thoughts. So Jesus's message is hard. Where's Paul? I don't know, yakking about love somewhere. Do you ever see Jesus talk about love, love, love for pages and pages? And no, you don't. Jesus's message is harder and better and much more interesting, but I've just heard this, that pastors will spend like a whole sermon just talking about one line from a Pauline thing, about how beautiful they think this one line from Paul is. They're just there to waste your time. They're gatekeepers, phonies. Matthew chapter 5, verses 17 to 20. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but you can pause and read it if you want to. Jesus didn't come to destroy the law, came to fulfill it. We're not supposed to have these branches of Christianity. You either follow Jesus Christ or you don't. And if you follow Paul and you don't fact check, if you don't look to see that what you're doing is in line with Jesus Christ, you're not following Jesus Christ. You're following some Christ or some Christian murderer named Saul. Church is not a building. We know this. When Jesus talks about his body being a temple, we're not supposed to just be these, I go to church once every week. That's not fulfilling your religious requirement. It's a life. You live your life for Jesus Christ. It really is not this compartmentalized one day a week. Everybody should know Sunday is not the Sabbath day. Everybody should know that, and yet they just go to church anyways on Sunday, little lemmings walking off the cliff, even though that's a hoax. They don't build them like they used to, right? If they could, they would. This is just an important point that I'll end here, because I guess people could think that you're being blasphemous by doubting Paul because Paul's in the Bible. God is not a book. I do not believe that God is a book. Now, we have a book, and the Bible is, in my opinion, the KJV Bible is the book that we should be going to, and it does have the Word of God in it. However, God is not a book. God existed before the printing press. God has never not existed. And God isn't a book, and I don't believe that the Bible is perfect, in that I don't believe that you can go into the Bible, pick one little phrase, and just apply that to your life, and that's a great thing every time. And I do have my own opinions about things. Like, I think Paul is a false prophet. I think Saul is a false prophet. And if you did believe that God was a book and that every little word in this book has to be taken exactly, at face value, I believe that you're treating God like a book, like a physical object. Like, oh, I have God in my hand right here in this book, and I don't agree with that. Revelation chapter 22. This is the second time that I've used this in this video. I think that the very first chapter of a book and the very last chapter of a book are extremely important. And how often do churches talk about Genesis 1? How often do churches talk about Genesis 22? Where from earlier I got the quote of Jesus Christ saying that we're going to be judged by our works. Probably shows you why they don't talk about that very much. Here's another part from Revelation chapter 22, the very last chapter of the Bible, where punishments are given out for people adding to the Bible and removing from the Bible. Well, safe to say, if we have these warnings and these punishments in the Bible, both of these things have occurred. I'm sure things have been added to the Bible. Probably like the Paul stuff. I don't think it belongs there. They're just letters from some person who thinks really highly of themselves. It's some false prophet who got their letters added to the Bible. And Jesus warned against us. And I think that the Bible is perfect because we have Jesus's words to compare to Paul. So it's all there. If you're there with your eyes open looking, you can figure it out that Paul is a false apostle. It's not hidden. And so in that way, I believe that the Bible's perfect. It's exactly what we need. The phoniness of Paul should reinforce that Jesus is the one we should be following, not men. And so yeah, I believe stuff has been added to the Bible, like the Pauline letters, and stuff has been removed from the Bible. I do believe that the Book of Enoch used to be in a non-corrupted form and probably was a part of the Bible, but it's been removed. And the Bible does reference other books that are no longer in the Bible, probably because they've just been corrupted at this point. I'll just end with this, because it's relevant. It is relevant. There's this huge thing about the Beatles with Paul being dead, Paul McCartney. There's a fake Paul McCartney. I mean, you can just see that they're different people. And I think it's a nod to the fake Paul thing. Paul is fake. Paul is a fake apostle. And a lot of pastors and people, they're phonies too. Just like Paul is a phony. They're phonies. That's why in this skit, your church youth group leader, that's why this one's throwing devil horn signs. Pointing with devil horn signs. It's the truth. People who pretend to run these church things, or I mean, they don't pretend to, they do. People who run church things in today, they're phonies. They're wolves in sheep's clothing. And you don't get to God through a church. You get to God through Jesus Christ. That's it. God bless everybody.